take your hand like this, like a claw, and you would like claw girls in. The resistance to perhaps forgiving yourself. What comes up? What is the best way to get a girlfriend? Okay, and it's important to understand this as soon as possible.
Creepy is actually not creepy, and not creepy is actually creepy.
Seizure, seizure. You have a kiss. Oh, no, real kiss. Real kiss, real kiss. Real kiss.
You're lying.
I swear.
Can you welcome it?
Quick warning, this video will include vague descriptions of assault on women. As you probably know by now, I try not to make these videos too graphic, but as a woman, the topic of this video is just so horrifying regardless. If you think you might be triggered by anything discussed, feel free to sit this one out and I'll see you in the next one. Real Social Dynamics, or RSD, is a self-help company which offers seminars and boot camps all around the world aimed at helping men pick up women. This would be all good if it was just teaching men how to come out of their shell and socialise with women while still respecting them, but the reality is basically just how to manipulate, blackmail and even force, in some instances, women to sleep with you. Pickup artists in general don't exactly have the best reputations. They seem to view women as objects and see dating and one-night stands as formulas. There's no way a woman just doesn't find you attractive, you're just not making the right moves. And if you are, then blame feminism, I guess. Before we get into the controversy, I'll just point out that in videos of the seminars, you do see the occasional woman there, but for the most part, RSD is almost exclusively targeted at men. So it's easier for me to just say men rather than men and the occasional woman. I also want to point out, before I get any angry comments, if you take the seduction lessons out of the equation, RSD wouldn't necessarily be all that bad. The majority of their content was focused around that, but they did have general self-help advice and advice on fitness, etc. It has encouraged some of the students to take responsibility of their own lives and their own health and happiness. Reading through some of their old content, not all of the self-help advice is that bad. But obviously with the emphasis on picking up women, it seemed like they were just saying if you sleep with hundreds of women, then that's just going to magically cure all your problems. Whether you're depressed, have low self-esteem, have anxiety, don't feel masculine enough, all you need to do is follow their tips and become a womanizer and everything will be fine. But obviously that's rarely the case in practice. It's like your finger getting put off and you just put a plaster over it. Some of the men who get into this clearly have some deep-rooted psychological issues, and RSD is unable to address that. The instructors weren't therapists, they were just self-professed gurus in a pseudo-scientific field. For the most part, once men get into this, it's basically just a downward spiral of radicalization. The instructors at RSD are so far down that spiral that I don't think there's any coming back for them. RSD was founded by Owen Cook and Nick Coe in 2002. There were a few different instructors with their own controversies that worked for RSD, but we're mainly going to focus on Owen and Julian Blank, who was hired as an executive coach in 2012. Owen seems to be more of a face for the company, whereas Nick manages more things behind the scenes. As a result, I couldn't find much information on controversy surrounding Nick, but here's one of his posts from a now deleted RSD forum, which has so many red flags. It was a detailed description of how to get a woman to break up with her boyfriend and get with you instead. Here are a couple of quotes that should give you the gist of it. When boyfriend destroying, you walk a tightrope between evoking too many bad feelings and having them anchored to you, and getting the chick to want to dump her boyfriend. It is preferable that you don't make it appear that you want her to dump her boyfriend, rather make the idea appear to be something from within her. You must reframe all behaviour, as in the boyfriend's behaviour, to appear like insecure nice guy behaviour, even behaviour that we, as ASFers, would use on girls. It then goes on to detail how you can reframe the boyfriend's behaviour to come across as insecure, which will, in turn, make him totally and irreversibly unappealing to the girlfriend, according to Nick. This is extremely manipulative, but so tame compared to what we still need to cover. That post was from a website called RSD Nation that had forums where staff and other users could post. While there was the occasional post from a level-headed user trying to debunk the nonsense, it was basically just a cesspool of misogyny with a splash of racism, homophobia and transphobia, so it's not surprising that it's since been shut down. Suspiciously, there are no archives on Wayback Machine, though I did manage to find some on a different archive site. There are posts explaining why Asian men supposedly aren't attractive, comments about black men basically being useless if they aren't well endowed, basically just fragile men trying to make themselves feel better by bringing others down. So many users, including the instructors, type out massive paragraphs stereotyping different types of women and acting like they actually know anything about women. A perfect example is when Nick said in the middle of a huge post of crap that women always sleep with or have some kind of relations with their gay friends. So you should pretend to be gay and the woman will sleep with you. You really can't make this up. They talk about Asian women being less resistant and models being easier because they're so insecure. Some users detailed their attempts at picking up women, such as this one, who started chatting to two women at a festival. They said they were lesbians, yet he persists for over 15 minutes, even when their friend physically tries to push him away. He's delusional enough to believe that it's all a test, like he's so important that two women would pretend to be gay just to test him, when in reality they're probably not pretending, and if they were, it was clearly to deter him from hitting on them. He literally tells them to kiss to prove it, which they do, and then he finally gives up, but says he still doesn't know if he believes them or if it was another test. He describes another interaction later that night, where he meets two more girls but focuses on one of them. She clearly isn't interested, yet he tries to kiss her neck multiple times and, quote, claws her, whatever that means. She said she was going home and he carries on trying to persuade them to have a coffee with him. They start walking away and he actually goes with them, still trying to convince them before eventually giving up. It's so unsettling how he seems to think that this is normal behaviour on his part, though it's hardly surprising when you see some of the methods taught by the instructors themselves, who promote the idea that no doesn't always mean no, and that you can probably chip away at a woman until she caves. Owen Cook apparently became interested in the pickup community after a bad breakup which sent him into a deep depression. He also goes by a different name, Tyler Durden. Yep, he literally calls himself after the narrator's alternate personality in Fight Club. I feel like he tries to give off a similar vibe too, but he just really can't pull it off. It baffles me that people pay this guy money to talk such nonsense. Anyway, I refuse to feed into this man's delusions or his ego, so we'll just call him Owen. First of all, this guy's just really weird. I don't know how else to describe him other than also allegedly a predator. In the seminars, he often acts out certain weird and inappropriate scenarios, and he just gets way too into it. Everyone's laughing in the room, but you can just feel the cringe.
Sometimes it takes messing your hair up or like doing this or just something weird. You need to get a little bit weird sometimes. A little bit. Okay? Get a little bit weird.
There are a few moments that are just so culty, like this one where they're all chanting his name.
Owen, 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 Owen,
Or when he does this weird thing where he tries to get into people's heads like he's a hypnotist or something.
So I'm in your head right now, okay? I'm controlling your thoughts in ways that you've never even conceived possible right now. You will react to me.
His whole pitch is pseudo-scientific, but there appears to be some undertones of the law of attraction and creating your own reality and that kind of thing, which just adds a whole new level to the craziness. He teaches various tactics to manipulate women, one of which he calls baby stepping, which is basically the idea that rather than just asking one big thing from a woman, you ask a series of small things and just work your way up to that big thing so she's more likely to say yes. He uses an analogy to explain, rather than asking someone to just eat a whole burger, you could ask them to eat a little bite of a chip, and then the whole chip, and then a few chips, and then a bite of the burger, and then eventually the whole burger. It's ironic that many of the tactics they teach men how to use on women are also tactics that they themselves use on their customers. Owen even admits to using baby stepping on customers to get them to buy more. The entire brand just preys on people who are in a vulnerable position and manipulates them. The worst of his methods is known as cavemanning, which appears to be a euphemism for just forcing yourself on a woman. If she's disinterested, he recommends to, quote, caveman her. He says she won't stop it and will then backwards rationalise that she wanted it. There's an unlisted clip on YouTube of Owen explaining how he did this to a stripper who he hired. He said in the morning he knew she wasn't in the mood, but just threw her on the bed and forced himself on her anyway. He goes into more detail, but I'm leaving it there. It's absolutely sickening. There's a clip where Julian talks about dating what he describes as a damaged girl, convincing her to let him move in and pay for his food and all the bills. Then he leaves for a month to travel with Owen. He lies and tells her he loves her, probably so she doesn't throw his stuff out. He also brags about how he made out with other girls in front of her on her birthday, and she just put up with it. After laughing through the whole thing, Owen points out that she was a doctor, and says just because a girl is classy doesn't mean she doesn't respond to abuse. There are also clips that make you wonder how good a father Owen is, such as ones where he's telling his kids that they were accidents. I mean, it's probably intended as a joke, but I'm not sure if they're old enough to get that. It just seems like something he said for the purpose of a video without even considering how it might affect them. Julian Blank was hired as an executive coach for RSD in 2012. In 2014, he was a popular topic of discussion in the news after being banned from the UK and other countries for his extremely controversial teachings. He, like Owen, talks about using manipulative tactics to get women to sleep with him, pushing forward before she even has a chance to have any doubts. He talks about finding solutions to every excuse a woman makes and ways of overcoming resistance. As with Owen's content, there is a constant theme throughout that no doesn't really mean no. After watching some clips of Julian, I was really racking my brain trying to think who he reminds me of, and then he started talking about a step-by-step method and it clicked. He's literally Dennis from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, only none of this is a joke.
So the first step is engaging her physically.
Engage physically.
He tells students to imagine that someone's holding a gun to their head and that their whole family will die if they don't sleep with this girl they're interacting with, a tip that Owen has also promoted. He often refers to a download bar, which is basically how drunk a woman is. It's interesting that so many of the hidden camera shots they do are in bars or clubs, where they know there will be drunk women, and yet in the clips I saw, they always seem sober themselves. Julian has a very off-putting way of interacting with women. I'm sure he'd call it dominating, but it comes across very aggressive. He just barks orders like, call me daddy and say you're 12 years old. Yeah. He suggests lying that there's an after party at your place when it's really just going to be you and this woman, quote, because it's the simplest way of handling that objection. He suggests isolating women from their friends and even threatening to take your own life if things aren't going well. There's a clip showing Julian literally forcing a woman to kiss him while she tries to push him away. He picks her up and takes her around the corner. Meanwhile, Owen is clearly trying to distract her friend in the background. Other clips show him grabbing women on the street in Tokyo and pushing their heads into his crotch. He says, if you're a white male, you can do what you want. This resulted in him being deported from Australia. After Julian was outed publicly for his disturbing behaviour, he appeared on CNN to explain himself. He claimed all of this was taken out of context and that sometimes he was just joking. He highlighted how he also teaches men when to back off and how to read the signs of consent. Yet there are countless examples of him not taking no for an answer and manipulating women into saying yes. If you have to manipulate someone or lie to someone or force yourself on someone, even if they eventually say yes, that's still not really consent. I'm so glad the interviewer seemed to be having none of it. It was clear that Julian was only backtracking now because society is less accepting of predatory behaviour, and he was finally facing some consequences, though nowhere near on the level that he deserved. Sure, some of the things he shared on social media, or weird one-liners he might have said, could have been jokes, but the tactics he promotes and the things he has been caught on camera doing are not jokes, and he just seems to conveniently skim over that. There is no context that would make those clips acceptable, and at no point does he even hint that any of it's a joke or that he's not serious. Even if he wasn't serious with the things he said and the behaviour he promoted, which I doubt, it just isn't made clear, so people will watch that and not realise it's a joke and think it's acceptable to behave like that. So now we've covered some of the creepy and literally illegal things that these men have said and done, you might be wondering how they're still maintaining an online presence. Well, they did a pretty good job of wiping it all from the internet. The RSD forum was deleted, and it's not even that easy to find archives of it, as the URL has been excluded on Wayback Machine. The videos of them admitting to assaulting women, and videos literally showing them assaulting women, are also pretty hard to come by because they've been removed. There are still a few articles about what happened, but I was shocked to see that there are next to no YouTube videos trying to expose them. I saw one that was showing how Owen's a liar in the uploader's experience, and another one was just taking the mick out of how cringy they were, but none of them seemed to be focusing on the really dark stuff. Apart from one, which is where I got the clips shown in this video from. That video is unlisted and has a totally irrelevant title and thumbnail, presumably because RSD would get it taken down if they knew about it. I noticed a couple of Reddit posts on RSD that were removed due to a copyright claim, which in my experience on Reddit is extremely rare. The Reddit user who first posted about this on the Reddit Bureau of Investigation in 2018 has since been suspended, perhaps for an unrelated reason, but I wouldn't be surprised if RSD had something to do with that. They've actually done a good job at covering their tracks, so some of their current fans who weren't around back then probably aren't even aware of all this. Those that are and have still stuck around have either been fooled into believing that all those seriously inappropriate clips were jokes or taken out of context, or they totally agree with that behaviour. I lean towards the latter because it's blatantly obvious to me that this wasn't a joke. It seems that they rebranded RSD to Self-Mastery Co. after their behaviour was exposed. They clearly still teach men how to pick up women, but on the surface at least, they appear to be marketing themselves more as a self-help company than a pick-up company. I assume Nick is still involved, but I couldn't find any mention of him on the website. Owen and Julian are still offering courses though. It looks like Owen no longer calls himself Tyler Durden. It really seems like they're trying to distance themselves from their pasts. It angers me so much that these men not only behaved like this in the first place, but they more or less totally got away with it. The things that they describe doing to women are things that probably still affect those women to this day, and yet Owen, Nick and Julian are all millionaires from it. I think what's so scary about this is that it's not too hard to see how someone could get indoctrinated into this. There are so many men and women who really struggle socialising and finding a relationship and can get really depressed as a result. When they're desperate and come across people like this who basically tell them that they can go from Will from In-Betweeners to Don Juan, they're going to be wearing rose-tinted glasses, making them less likely to see red flags and more open to suggestion. Sure, a lot of the students probably were misogynistic to begin with anyway, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were at least some people that just kind of got roped in and conditioned into objectifying women. Since the Me Too movement, I don't think teaching behaviour like this would fly today, and that's exactly why they did such a good job of removing all the evidence. As you already know, none of these men really faced the consequences they deserved, so this is going to be a somewhat unsatisfying end to the video. But it doesn't have to be the end of the situation. I really encourage you to share this video or any articles that you find about RSD. Don't let this get buried. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you heard of RSD, and if so, were you aware of all the controversy? If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out my Patreon, links will be in the description. Huge thank you to my patrons whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.